everybody. Welcome to the Minimalist Podcast, where we discuss what it means to live a meaningful life with less. My name is Joshua Fields Milburn.
And I'm Ryan Nicodemus, and together, we're the Minimalists.
We're here with Malabama.
Hi, everybody.
TK Coleman.
What it is.
The rest of our team is here in the studio today as well. Coming up today on this free public minimal episode, we're talking to a listener about her basement full of clutter and this new design trend called Cluttercore. We also have an outstanding lightning round segment, a live stream question, and a listener tip for you. You can check out the full 2-hour maximal edition of episode 376, where we answer 4 times the questions, and we dive deep into several simple living segments. That private podcast episode is out right now at patreon.com/theminimalist. Your support keeps our podcast and YouTube channel 100% advertisement free, because, say it with me, y'all, advertisements suck. Yes, they do. Let's start with our callers. If you have a question or comment for our podcast, give us a call, 406-219-7839, or email a voice memo to podcast@theminimalists.com. Our first question today is from Reggie.
My name is Reggie. I am from Columbus, Ohio, and I am a Patreon subscriber. Over 15 years ago, I had a paper crafts business. I was a one-woman operation with a toddler at the time. After 2 years of working around the clock, I burned out. I had to either find a full-time job quickly or sell all the product I had left in my basement, which was around $30,000 of stock. I went back to work full-time, and in the years that followed, I went through several life changes that allowed me no time to declutter all the stock in the basement. Plus, I had decades of stuff that I had amassed in the house. Fortunately, I stumbled upon your first film. It was eye-opening for me, so thank you for that. Over the past year and a half, I have sold and given away a huge amount of our possessions, but I am still struggling with the stock in the basement. I try to give away anything that is not worth at least $50. However, I'm confused about how to value this brand new, but now vintage stock. Collectively, the stock is worth a decent amount, even with sunk costs factored in. But if it's sold as individual items, I have very little worth over $50. For example, if I have a box of 50 packages of chipboard letters where each package retails for $6, individually $6 isn't much, but $300 is substantial. I have tried selling some of these individual products as part of a larger kit combined with other products, and I've also tried selling them individually and in bulk on Facebook Marketplace and eBay with mixed success. After nearly 2 years of this, I am tired. I've given thousands of dollars worth of stock already, given it away, but feel so guilty and stressed with the stock that seems bottomless and never ending. I am tired of the effort and time it takes to list, sell, and ship. I also find myself getting annoyed that when I give it away, it's the same people every time that come grab it. Petty, I know. Any advice on managing that emotion? I have been trying to focus on organizations and schools, but honestly, I feel like I'm still clinging. I want to keep a small stash for myself, small being the operative word, but I'm struggling on what to keep, what to let go, how to look at and value the remaining stock, and just the feelings of clinging and guilt that I'm trying to fight. So I would appreciate any advice you can provide. Thank you so much.
Reggie, I'm so sorry that you're going through a difficult time of not just physical clutter, but there's a ton of mental clutter that is being produced by this, the emotional clutter. And I want to answer your question head on, but first, I'm reminded, since we're doing the whole episode today about Cluttercore, and I've got this article from parents.com. It's called Cluttercore is the trend many parents need right now. And I want Reggie to avoid this trend in her own basement because she's inadvertently created this cluttered space. And that wouldn't be a problem by itself, I don't think. But it's causing all of this inner turmoil, this suffering, this stress, this discontent, and of course, the fear as well. And she's even feeling agony and anger toward other people. So the clutter in her basement is leading her to lash out sometimes toward other people, or potentially lash out toward other people. Jordan, on the screen, I'd love to put a picture here of Cluttercore. This is the new design trend. This picture that you're going to see, and Danny's going to give us the iPad so we can take a look at it here. This trend, this Cluttercore trend, this is a picture from Architectural Digest. I'm going to hand this over to, I want you to take a look at this picture. TK, and then we'll hand it over to Ryan here. This new trend is called Cluttercore.
So this is in vogue right now.
Yes, and let's talk about why. we've decided. Yeah.
That is, that stresses me out looking at it. But you know what? For this woman right here, though, maybe it doesn't stress her out, which is, I'm not going to judge her for it. But yeah, for me, that's pretty extreme.
Yeah. I don't have any judgments. I have some observations about this, right? So this picture that you see on the screen right now is a picture from Architectural Digest. And this new trend is called Cluttercore, where it's taking all of the things that we're clinging to and now displaying it and being proud of the clinging. This is not a design trend. This is a mental illness that is disguised as a design trend. It's holding on to everything, not being willing to let go. I'm okay with holding on to certain things. In fact, later in this episode, we're going to talk about maximalism, the intentional use of beautiful objects. Totally fine with that.
Mm-hmm.
However, with something like this, we're simply hiding the problem. And worse, we're displaying the problem and pretending it's virtuous. I used to be obese, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is obesity of stuff. It's the overconsumption and then looking at it and saying, oh, this is a good thing. I'm taking the thing that stresses me out, that makes me worried, that makes me depressed, that makes me upset, and I'm going to display it to the world and say, look at me. I can't let go of everything and I'm proud of it. No, this is creating illness in our lives. It's creating not just the discontent, but it's creating discontent for the people around us as well. And so the same way as when I was obese and I kept eating and consuming and consuming and consuming, I was also materially obese in my own life. Ryan and I, when we were back in the corporate days, before we were the minimalists, we held on to a lot of stuff. We accumulated even more stuff. We became possession obese. And as we held on to those things, it was only a problem because it got in the way. And that's what clutter is. And so Cluttercore is what? It's getting in the way core. It's celebrating the things that get in the way. I'm all for displaying beautiful objects, beautiful things, owning things that add value to your life. I'm not for relabeling something that is stressful and anxiety producing as something as though it's positive and it is useful in our lives. These things, if they get in the way for you, it doesn't matter what you call it. It's a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. This seems like a really, I don't know, like a hardcore American flex of like, look at all the stuff that I own. Here it is. It's kind of like how, like back in the day, different landowners, they would grow grass just to show that they had so much money they didn't even have to plant a crop. They could just grow a lawn.
Yeah, that's where front yards came from.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And so this to me seems like, man, it is the strangest flex. I wonder if there's any value though, and maybe you got some insight on this, TK, but I wonder if there's any value to someone embracing their clutter. So like a hoarder, for example, they beat themselves up day after day because they have so much stuff, but it's so overwhelming to like even dig into, that nothing ever happens and it just continues to accumulate. Is there any advantage to just saying, you know what, I'm a hoarder, that's what I am, and let me display it?
I think it's the same thing as, that's sort of giving up in a way, right?
Oh, yeah.
It's giving up. Now, I also don't want you to beat yourself up. And that's actually why I brought this question up for Reggie, because I don't believe that she's doing the Cluttercore thing, but I want her to avoid that if this clutter, which it clearly is, causing some sort of suffering in her life. And that suffering is leading to discontent. And by saying, what's she doing now? So Ryan's bringing up a good point. I don't want her to beat herself up over the things.
Yeah.
But I want her to understand that it is also okay to let go.
Yeah.
That's right. Ryan, with respect to your question, is there any value? I like to think that with any form of behavior that is self-defeating or appears to be self-defeating, people are doing it because it gives them some kind of value, even if it's something that they would be better off letting go. And the first step to letting go is figuring out, well, how is this creating value in my life? And then how can I go about replacing that value in a healthier way, in a way that has less cost or a less negative consequence. One thing that you see, economically speaking, is something that's called costly signaling. Costly signaling is a social phenomenon whereby you take on a really high expense for the sake of signaling strength or reliability or endurance to other people, because the average person can't absorb that cost. And if you can absorb it, it might say something about you that creates a social result. Banks do this in terms of like their properties. They spend a lot of money on these physical, expensive properties because they are signaling to people, we are here to stay and you can trust us, because you're probably not going to put your money in a bank unless it physically looks like it's going to be there for a long time. So having those huge pillars and things like that creates that impression. People even do it with sometimes things like the BMW. It's a social signal. If you work in a certain kind of industry, you might want to signal to your customers or to your peers, I belong here, I'm not struggling with money, therefore you can trust me to be your financial advisor. It even happens in poor neighborhoods. Wearing the $300 shoes might signal to people, hey, I'm cool. I'm somebody that is to be respected, or I'm somebody that's good at basketball, or I'm somebody that takes care of myself. Doesn't mean that it's the right decision. It's not about moralizing it, but it's about understanding it in terms of the incentives and the benefits we get out of playing these different types of social games. But bringing it back to you, Reggie, I think Josh is absolutely right in terms of not overwhelming yourself in this way. One thing I would say to continue kind of like this economic theme is that when it comes to selling things, there's a difference between the catalog cost and what other people are willing to pay. And sometimes it can be very difficult to honestly face the reality of demand when we are familiar with the sacrifices we made to acquire something. So if I paid $1,000 for it and there's nobody out there that's willing to pay me more than $200, that's going to be tough for me to sell at that price, especially when I have a magazine I can look up or an industry catalog I can look at that tells me the market value is $1,000. That's the market value. That's what I paid. Except it's not, right? Because the moment someone pays $200 for it, what's going to happen is that catalog's going to be updated and then the market value is going to be lower. That's what we see happening in the stock market all the time. Why does that price go up? Why does that price go down? Because it's changing in relation to what other people are paying. When people start paying more for it, then the value goes up. When people are like, nah, I'm not willing to pay $100 for that stock. It says $100 in the books, but that price is going to come down once somebody says, okay, I'm willing to sell it for 75. So I would think about the value of these things, not in terms of how much you already paid for it, but I would think about it in terms of what is the real demand, even if that's significantly less than the sacrifices I made at one point in the past. Because even though you paid a lot for it, you're going to continue to pay more for it in non-financial terms by harboring the stress and the guilt and the self-condemnation and the resentment and the frustration of having something that's taking up space in your life when you don't want it. And you got to keep thinking about it, and you got to keep listing things, and you got to keep checking up with the listings, and you got to keep texting people and keep responding to phone calls and keep thinking about it. That's a cost that you're paying every single day. And you got to ask yourself, how much is that worth?
Yeah. We're really talking about the additional costs here.
Yeah.
And so if I'm in Regine's shoes, the thing I want to get really clear about, she said, I want to hold on to some of these things. Okay, great. What specifically do you want to hold on? Well, there's only one way to determine that. It's by going through and saying, what will add value to my life? That's the first step. And then also understanding, okay, but is that still going to get in the way? Just because something adds value to my life doesn't mean that I'm supposed to hold on to it, because there's the opportunity cost of letting it go to make room for something that is more special to me, more value adding, more precious, more enjoyable than those things. And so as soon as you've identified the things that you want to hold on to, maybe of the $30,000 worth of stock, there's $500 worth that you want to hold on to, then everything else is something you want to get rid of, right? How do I let go of material possessions? It's pretty simple. It's a basic formula because it's a very mechanical thing. I list it. If I can sell it for more than $20, now that threshold is going to be different for you. And I probably need to update this rule, by the way, Ryan. I was thinking that when we did the 2020 rule.
Yeah, that was like
2011.
Yeah.
So I looked it up recently. Inflation, it's now the $26 rule.
Oh, okay. All right. 26?
Yeah. Within 26 miles, $26.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think you get the point. For something like this, it's probably not worth listing something that is $3, $10, whatever, because of the amount of stress it's causing you. However, if it wasn't causing you any stress, I would say yes. If you were enjoying the process of selling each item individually and you set up a booth at a flea market and you're interacting with people, that one's 50 cents, this one's $5, great.
Yeah.
Then I would say, wonderful. What a joyous experience. You actually get to have some joy from letting go of these things. But right now, it's not causing joy. It's causing anguish and it's causing fear because you're afraid of letting go of any of it. And so let's say that you could theoretically sell this $30,000 worth of stock for $5,000 right now and take a $25,000 loss. That's a sunk cost. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But even then, let's say the stock is worth $5,000, but you're going to have to spend a year getting rid of it. Maybe it makes sense to simply donate it. Maybe losing the $5,000, if you can afford it, is the opportunity for you to let go. It's almost as though you're paying $5,000 in order to let go of not just the stuff, but all of the mental clutter and emotional clutter that tags along with it.
I just had to do that. I had 2 bathroom rugs that I paid $50 for. And this was a few years ago, and I was selling them on Marketplace for $20. Several people inquired, so many no-shows, so many people rescheduling. And this happened over a period of 2 weeks to the point where it's like, I do not love $20 enough to work this hard for it. People are no-showing me. People are wasting my time. People are changing their plans, all sorts of things. Someone who happens to work around the corner shows up and says, I'll buy the rugs for 10. Now I paid 50, listed it for 20, couldn't be happier to give it away for 10 because what I lose in that $10 from the listing and what I lose in that $40 from the original price, I gain in never having to think or talk about those rugs again, especially after spending 2 weeks having more conversations about bathroom rugs than I would ever hope to have, right? So you got to think about those additional costs.
Yeah,
but like you said, if you enjoy it, do it.
Yeah, that's how I look at it. It's like, Reggie, if you had $30,000 extra in the bank and you could afford it and you could lose that and it wouldn't make you go bankrupt, would you spend that $30,000 to get rid of all your clutter? And it's a high price to pay. But again, the question doesn't matter the price as much as what is it worth to you?
And it's activity clutter as well, because it's taking up, it's calendar clutter. It's taking up so much of your time trying to let go of these things that, as you've stated, individually, they're essentially worthless, right? They're not worth enough to try to sell, right? And so I'm going to find a way. I'm going to give myself a deadline. And then mechanically, I'm going to go through the whole formula here. So we'll wrap it up by saying this. There's an essay. We'll put a link to it in the show notes as well. It's called How to Let Go. And it's about letting go of possessions. And the first thing I'll do is I will try to sell a thing if it is worth more than $100 or $50 or $20. You get to set your threshold. If it doesn't sell in a week, what do? I don't just panic. I lower the price, as TK just illustrated, right? If it doesn't sell within 30 days, no matter how much I want to sell it, then I will donate it. If I can't donate it for some reason, because no place will take it, I remember I was just telling, I think, Danny about this recently. When our last documentary came out, Less Is Now, it hit Netflix. That I was just going to Goodwill with my monthly donation box, and I walk up. It's the one right down the street from here. I walk up with my box and I'm like, here, I'd like to donate these. He's like, I'm sorry, we can't take any more donations right now. There's this new documentary that just came out and everyone is giving us their stuff.
So good.
And I just sort of scurried away with my box of stuff. And it was a big problem for me. But usually, most months, I take it to Goodwill. But if they won't take it, what do? If I can't donate it anywhere, I can't sell it, then eventually, yes, I will trash it, but only as a last resort. There are plenty of things that you can do with your stuff before simply renting a dumpster and throwing all your stuff in there. We're not suggesting that, but it may come to a point where in order to get it out of your life, if you've tried everything else, throwing it in the trash might be the best way to let go. Speaking of documentaries, our first film, Minimalism, which you can download right now at minimalismfilm.com. We have 6 hours of bonus interviews in there, and a lot of people talked and had answers about questions about clutter and how we use our home space in those bonus interviews. They didn't make the final cut of the film, but there were some really great interviews in there. So you can watch the film over there, minimalismfilm.com. It's on iTunes and Amazon and everywhere else. And also you can download the 6 hours of bonus interviews at minimalismfilm.com. But Reggie, we're going to send you a copy of that as well as the bonus interviews. Hopefully it'll get you inspired to let go of this excess that is taking up all that space in your basement and in your heart. Ryan, what time is it?
You know what time it is. It's time for the lightning round where we answer your questions from TikTok.
Yes, indeed. You can follow The Minimalists on TikTok, also Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. At The Minimalists is our handle. Now, during the lightning round, this is where Ryan, TK, and I do our best within 60 seconds to answer your questions with a short, shareable, less than 140-character response. We put the text to these minimal maxims in the show notes over at theminimalists.com/podcast. So you can copy and share our pithy answers on social media if you'd like. It looks like Chris has a question for us.
Which of your past objects in the added value segments have since become clutter?
Ryan, you want 60 seconds?
Yeah. I will. I'll go. All right, Professor Sean, go for it. All right, here's my pithy answer. After taking an inventory of all the things you've minimized, you can minimize that list too.
Oh, I love it.
So here's the thing is, we have this obsession with holding lists, not just with our things, but with people, with our wins, with our losses. I don't know why we're so obsessed with lists, but we are. But here's the thing, holding a list doesn't really do much for you. There's probably somewhere out there where, having a list of whatever inventory, if you've got a business or whatever it is. But the worst thing we can do is sit here and hold a list on ourselves for the things or the mistakes that we have made. So, I have no idea, what past objects that were in the added value segment that I let go of or I had to donate, because I don't hold lists.
Yeah, you're not making an inventory of the things that used to add value to your life that you've let go of.
Yeah.
Let's get 60 seconds on the clock for TK Coleman. Takoa LaPrince Coleman, TLC. What do you got for us?
If it gets in the way, it's clutter. What is the way? The way you want to feel, the way you want to think, the way you want to show up for the people that you love. Duke Ellington said, it don't mean a thing if it ain't got that swing. The way is what gets you into your groove. The way is when you dance to the rhythms of your true self. The way is when you bang to the beat of your own drum. And anything that screws that up, no matter what anybody else thinks of it, it's clutter for you. And life is measured in terms of the moments that you spend in the way that you want to live. And anything that gets in the way, to even be focused on it, to even be preoccupied with it, to even be obsessed with it, to even quantify your life in terms of how many of those things you've gotten rid of or want to get rid of, it's all a distraction. Not only is the stuff a form of clutter, but so is a preoccupation with a stuff. So is a determination to always count the number of things that we have. That too is a form of clutter. The way is just being free and living your life without counting, without quantifying.
For TK, we have the 27-second shot clock.
I'm sorry, TK. That was 10 seconds over. You'll have to do it again.
$1, Bob.
Take two.
Yeah. All right. Well,
usually Josh goes first. And he has like an extra 20 seconds that he can give me.
Never. Oh, yeah. So because I'm so pithy, you're
right,
saying.
And when you chose Ryan first, I knew I was screwed.
Well, I had an extra 20 seconds too, but Josh took it.
Minimalism.
Yeah.
I've got something pithy for you. But before we do, I just want to echo both of your points here. And I'll actually answer the question head on as well, because I think it will be valuable to Chris. But give me 60 seconds and then we'll talk about this. Here's my pithy thing. Question everything, because the things that add value today might become clutter tomorrow. And I think that's important. We have an added value segment on the podcast because we highlight things that add value to our lives. It could be my belt. It could be a song. It could be a book. It could be a poem. Here is something that is adding value to my life.
Right.
But if it stops adding value, I'm going to stop holding on to it. I hold all of these things loosely because if I don't hold on to them loosely, what happens? I cling to it. And the more I cling, I start clinging to this, I cling to that, I cling to this other thing. It really weighs me down. And when I feel so weighed down, the only thing to do is not to cling more tightly. It's to simply let go. That's my pithy thing for you, just in time. I will say one thing that I've recommended in the past as an added value item was, and I just was reminded by Professor Sean about this. I had something called a psoas. Do you ever have one of those?
No.
So my psoas gets really tight. My psoas muscle gets tight.
Oh, it's like and it digs into okay.
Yeah, and so I used to use it all the time, but then I found Egoscue therapy, and I started doing Egoscue therapy, and the thing that added value to my life, that psoas, which I've talked about on this podcast at some point before, it stopped adding value. I stopped using it. And so when I stopped using it, I let it go so someone else could get value from it. Because if I cling to it, what happens? I stop getting value from it. And I also I prohibit everyone else from being able to get value from it as well.
Hey, brother, stop advertising.
I've got someone who works in the advertising industry wrote in to us to say they're unsubscribing from our podcast because we say advertisements suck. I'm actually going to do that. I'm going to talk about that during the sucky ad segment on the private podcast. Let's check in with our Patreon live stream in a moment. But first, real quick, for right here, right now, here's one thing that's going on in the life of the Minimalists. You all probably know we have this nice little side project. It's called minimalism.com. It's called Minimalism Life is the name of the side project. Back in 2016, the Minimalists teamed up with Minimalissimo, Carl over there, and Alberto over at 5 Style to bring you the best of minimalist design, travel, and intentional living, minimalist well-being. And we have a team of minimalist writers as well who write over there at minimalism.com. And we're looking for some new writers. So if you're an aspiring writer or you're a writer who's written, great. Our side project is looking for new writers to share your minimalism stories. You can get involved and contribute to our weekly journal over at minimalism.com. Once you go over there, you just click the Get Involved tab and you'll find all the details. And who knows, if you write something that really resonates with the audience. By the way, it's hundreds of thousands of people who read over there at the Minimalism Life blog and the weekly journal that comes out. Yeah. If people find value in it, you could also participate in the Minimalism Life podcast, which has become my new favorite little micro podcast. It's like 3 to 5 minutes. The first 5 or 6 episodes are out now. I think the first 4 episodes are out right now. And you can find those as well at minimalism.com.
You know how many requests we get for guest essays? I mean, I get emails all the time. If you email our the email we have on our website, it's, hey, I'm so-and-so, would love to have a guest, or I'd love to be a guest on your blog. Can I write an essay for you? This is a great opportunity for people who are trying to do that.
That's exactly it. Yeah, minimalism.com. Alabama, let's check in with the live stream. What do you got for us?
We have a question here from Angel. She says, I heard you mention occasionally that you do someone else's podcast. Any chance that you have a directory for podcasts that you've done?
Yes, we do. theminimalists.com/media. You can find, we've done over 700 media interviews over the last 12 years. Now, the reason being is 1 year we did 400. In 2014, we did 400 interviews. And that's while we were on the road. We did those 119 events. And we did a long book tour with our second book, Everything That Remains. And so we've done 700 interviews. And you can find all of them over at theminimalists.com/media. Let's do one more question, Alabama.
Here's a question from Andrea. She says, I struggle with wanting to remodel my space. We can't afford what I want to do, so I keep filling the void with new furniture to refresh my space. Any thoughts on accepting an imperfect space?
Oh, yes. So every space will always be imperfect, right? You are already perfect. You're born perfect. No one looks at a baby and says, oh my God, we need to perfect this baby. We need to improve this baby. Here's a self-help book for your baby.
I'm just
They
thinking
did
about
that to me.
I'm just thinking about how I wish my mom would have got me ear reduction surgery when I was a baby. But anyway.
And yet we are constantly obsessed with improving our space. Why? Because we feel incomplete inside us. And one of the reasons we feel so incomplete is because marketers, advertisers, major corporations do a great job of making us feel inadequate. And when the way they do that is by saying, hey, you have a problem. You didn't know you have a problem, but we have a solution for you, right? And so selling solutions is actually part of the problem. And so I try to have solutions on this podcast. I have observations and some insights, recipes that may or may not work for you, depending on where you are in your life. I will say this, during the private podcast later, we do every week, we do a minimalist home tour. And we're talking about Cluttercore this week, and we're going to dive deep into the Cluttercore movement and this design trend. But then I'm also going to show you a part of my home that is filled with beautiful objects. But not just my home. I want to show you Axel Vivort's home, who's my favorite interior designer. Spoiler alert, he's a maximalist. My favorite interior designer is a maximalist and really enjoys beautiful objects. Yeah. However, it's the opposite of Cluttercore. Here's one thing that I do, and I'll answer Andrea's question with this. The one thing that I do regularly with the objects in my house, I move them around constantly. So it's the same stuff. Yeah. But in different areas. We learned this from Bobby. We had Bobby on from Queer Eye. He was on the podcast. We did a whole episode about interior design. And I learned this from him. It's like, I have things that I think are beautiful and useful, and they add aesthetic value to my home. But the way that I keep it fresh is I'm going to move this vase to this part of the house. I'm going to move this from the living room to the shelf in the hallway. Yeah. And by doing that, I keep the same things, but the space is constantly refreshed. Yeah. Every month, I'm moving the things around.
The one thing that, this isn't a judgment, Andrea, it's just an observation about you can't afford to remodel the place that the room that you want to remodel. So you buy new furniture to put in this new room. So again, this isn't a judgment, but it's almost like when I see someone who is trying to like really get a hold of their finances, they buy all of these finance books.
Yes.
And you can't spend your way out of financial debt, just the same as you can't spend your way out of not being able to afford to remodel that room. So again, this isn't a judgment, but yeah, you might have to just kind of rearrange some things right now. Every time you want to buy a new piece of furniture, put that in the remodeling fund.
Yeah. You know, I used to have bad luck with computers, and it's the strangest thing. Every time I would go to an airport, something would happen. One time, my computer is on the security belt, and the guy stops me because he wants to check me out. And I can see my computer like at the edge, somebody else's luggage is pushing it over, and it's gonna fall. And I'm like, my computer's like, sir, stand down, stand right here, sir. And I watched my computer fall and just like. And I'm like, oh, are you kidding me? There was another time where some guy just like puts the wrong computer in his bag and it's mine. And like, I'm working with the airport to try to catch this guy. This would happen to me at least once a year. One of my friends said to me, he goes, I don't know why, but this is clearly part of your vibration or your destiny or something. Like, you're just that guy. He's like, what if you leaned into it? What if you just made up your mind that every year you're just going to get a new computer and that's going to be your thing? Stop resisting it. And I was like, you know what? Okay, I'm going to stop resisting it. Once a year, I'm just going to get a new computer, whether something happens or not, right? Nothing ever happened to my computers after that. Just a mental trick, right? Yeah. So sometimes the solution is to lean in. So you can ask yourself, why can't I just be happy with the way things are? Well, why can't I just be happy with liking to switch things up every once in a while? There's room to perhaps double down and say, hey, I do this anyway. Is there a way for me to make peace with it? Can I just say, hey, every 6 months or every year, I'm going to rearrange things and move things around because I'm not the type of person who's cool with it always being the same. I like to mix it up. So maybe there's room to make peace with what your behavior is showing you about what you truly enjoy.
TSA PreCheck is way, way less expensive than buying a new computer every year. You can just leave your computer in the bag and send it through.
Look at that. Yeah. I needed you 4 or 5 years ago.
I think the thing to remember here for Andrea is peace cannot be acquired. Happiness cannot be acquired. Tranquility cannot be acquired. Yes, you can buy new furniture for your home. You can buy new clothes for your body. You can buy a new car to take you to work. You can buy a new home. You can get a new apartment outfitted with all new things. You can buy beautiful objects that add some sort of aesthetic value to your living space. But you'll never be able to purchase happiness. And that's what we're trying to do quite often. I'm going to buy this thing. It's going to give me a sense of purpose or meaning or joy. Nope. Those things will only cover up the peace, the joy, the eudaimonia that is already there within you. Alabama will check back in with the live stream on the private podcast. But in the meantime, what else you got for us?
Here's a minimalist insight from one of our listeners.
Hi, my name is Natalie. I'm from Cochrane, Ontario. I would like to share how I limit my shopping on Amazon. I only pay with gift cards when shopping online, so once I have added the items to my cart, I then have to buy a gift card at the store and apply it to my account before finalizing my purchases. This makes buying online less convenient, and it allows me to think before I buy. If it is not worth my time going to a store and buying a gift card, then I probably don't need the items in my cart.
That is our minimal episode for today. We'll see you on Patreon for the full 2-hour maximal edition of episode 376, which includes a million more questions from our listeners, a long discussion on all of the perils and pitfalls and the disagreements we have about Cluttercore. We're also going to talk about maximalism a bit on that episode. We've got a minimalist home tour in which we review some of the clutter, so-called clutter, in my own home. We've got our infamous obsolete object segments. We've got much, much more of less, including an outstanding added value segment for you. If you want to hear all that, check out the Minimalist Private Podcast at patreon.com/theminimalist or click the link in the description to subscribe and get your personal link so that our weekly maximal episodes play in your favorite podcast app. You'll also gain access to all of our podcast archives, all the way back to episode 001. Yes, indeed. All right, y'all. If you leave here today with just one message, let it be this. Love people and use things, because Cluttercore will never work.
We'll see you next time, y'all.
Every little thing you think that you need, every little thing you think that you need, every little thing that's just feeding your greed. Oh, I bet that you'd be fine without it.